She'll take control.
Everybody else set?
Ready.
In here, we'll get rolling. Roger, you all set?
Almost.
Counselor Bowe
Almost
excused.
10 minutes.
Counselor Bowe excused. Thank you.
Actually, we're jealous, but it's excused, okay?
Vacation.
All set? Bring this meeting to order. Would you please rise and pledge allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Twyla?
Counselor Bowe is excused. Counselor Bickford?
Yeah.
Counselor Ward?
Here.
Counselor Pomelo?
Here.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Here.
Counselor Mason?
Here.
Counselor Lund?
Here.
First item, Twyla?
Is under public hearings, a special entertainment permit for Raymond J. Levine, VFW, Post 9459.
And I'll open that public hearing. Does anybody have any comments or concerns? Seeing no interest for the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing. Next item.
Is under audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Sir?
Sir,
Sir?
what is that all about? Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. Did you guys miss me last meeting?
We did.
I knew you did. Okay. My first question is, who is the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Lisbon? As the town manager, all requests for Freedom of Access Acts should be signed by the Chief Administrative Officer, since he is the sole custodian of public records for the town of Lisbon. If the town of Lisbon is denying the information requested, it should be signed by this council and not a town employee, since this action could result in a lawsuit being filed, which will cost the taxpayers tax dollars in legal fees. Right now, two individuals who do not pay taxes in this town are making decisions which results in tax dollars being utilized to defend their actions. I think that process needs to be looked at and taken a close look, because it's our tax dollars that these two people are playing with. The second thing is, why doesn't the town manager brief the people on the status of voting on the municipal budget at every meeting like he did on the Lisbon Connection? The people are still waiting to hear when they'll be allowed to vote on the municipal budget. We need to be getting updates, like, what is the status of the 32,005? The last time the town manager briefed the people, he stated the town was seeking to recover the funds in civil court. Has this been filed in civil court?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I asked is because the listing the town manager provided the court on my case that we had going, on all open loans, the $32,500 is not on this list. Why is that? It should still be an open loan, so it should appear on the open loans list. Okay? Please advise everybody on which ordinances we are required to comply with and which ordinances we can ignore. Because apparently there are quite a few ordinances in this town that are not being enforced. We need to know which ones we have to comply with and which ones we don't. And the last thing I have is for the people who live in Houston Park. After you receive your tax bills, the people in Houston Park should immediately file abatements for noise and structural damage from the overweight vehicles allowed to utilize local streets in residential areas. And I hope they do. All of them. Thank you.
Dot?
Just one question. Anyone standing behind me, I just spilled my water. I didn't wet my pants. Spilled it in my lap. Are we going to be allowed to ask questions during the budget presentations with the school department and the town?
Not tonight. Basically, it's just a presentation to the council, just an overview. It's more or less they're presenting to us. There won't be any questions.
Okay, I do have one question then. The school department, Mr. Green, is looking for $300,000 for this new budget, and I'm wondering if he has any money left over from the current fiscal year budget.
I mean, at this point in time, Dot, I don't believe that, that the school department's up, but he's here, so he'll listen, so if he wants to address that later, he can, but this wouldn't be a night to be discussing those type of items. It's more just a presentation to the town council for the budget. There'll be many nights that we'll be going through workshops where we'll be discussing all those items.
I realize that, but
Yeah.
I thought it was a valid question.
Just unfortunately, it's on a school meeting, so I can't actually take the superintendent out of the audience to ask questions, so. Any other items? Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close audience participation.
Next item is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Seeing none, Order 2012-35 to approve the minutes of February 28, March 6, and a special entertainment permit and liquor license for the Raymond J. Levine VFW Post 9459.
So moved. I'll second it.
So we're voting on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2012-36, Project Scott, Snow Chiefs, purchasing of grooming machine.
Steve, would you like to bring that up?
That is funding that comes, we collect funding for snowmobiles, and every year it gets sent back to us, and we give it to the local snowmobile club. That's a project that carries out in every town to help them groom trails, whatever they seem they need money for.
Is there someone that would speak up on behalf of the club just to kind of explain what they got this year for a groomer or what they're looking for? Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
Our oldest groomer is a 21 years old. We're looking to replace that one. What we're looking at is a track truck groomer. Can't beat the price of it, considering if you go the other route with the snowmobile, you're looking at $12,000 versus $8,000, so that's the deal.
Could you explain the difference between like the groomer versus a track truck?
Yeah, the track truck is a better way to groom now. You're going one pass versus two passes with a snowmobile. You're gonna get more use out of it. Better trail system. We're working on a loop trail system with 6 other towns right now, and with that, we'll just make things a lot better and bring more people to our areas as well, so.
And the $7,100 will fund that completely, so you'd be all set.
Completely, yeah.
Any other questions from council?
Oh, I know all about it.
You know all the whole deal,
Yeah,
don't you?
I'm just curious, how much money is in the account? Do we know? or-
We have a,
I-
There's enough, it's either 8,000 or 9,000.
Okay, I was just curious.
I believe last time you came for a groomer, there was actually enough in there for 2 at one time, then you were just going to get this one, and then
Correct.
later on, move forward with the next groomer. So hopefully next year we have a lot more snow that we can play with it more.
Yeah. Work with what you got.
Whatever, for what we do got, you do a good job.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions from council? So I'd like to have a motion to accept the bid.
I'll make the motion to accept the bid.
The bid would be for the sum of $7,100 to the, who is it actually going to be purchased to?
Snow Chiefs.
To the projected Snow Chiefs. I'd like to hear a motion.
Yeah, I made the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Order passed,
Thank you, Steve.
6-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Other business, Finance Director's report.
Hello. So you should all have the finance report in front of you for the month of February. Looking at the revenues, February brought in just under 100,000. This is primarily due to excise tax collection that came in around 80,000, and Public Works recycling revenue at 7,000. The state revenue sharing and URIP funding were not recorded for the month of February. However, that will be an additional 66,000 and 26,000 respectively to the revenues for the month. Excise tax is just over 59% collected for the month. Last February, year-to-date collection was at 56%. So we're right on track, if not a little better than last year. However, with our projections, we're still estimating to be under budget, under the budgeted 1.2 million by approximately 100,000. So I don't believe we're going to meet our target, but we are doing a little better than last year. That's really all that's going on with revenues, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions on revenues? Seeing none. Next.
Okay, moving on to expenses. Total expenditures for the month of February were $535,332. Of this, 64%, or $341,000, was related to personnel services, including your wages and benefits. Contractual services made up approximately 28% at $149,000. This is primarily due to winter public works of $50,000, waste disposal fees of $20,000, a revaluation progress payment of $15,000, bus service expenses of $10,000, MMA dues of $9,000, and town building expenses of $28,000, where we pay for our heating oil, electricity, and telephone charges. Repair and maintenance and supplies made up 10% at $54,000. This is primarily for gas and fuel purchases. And this is all offset by a negative 2% in grants, as we received $12,000 for the rec department senior trips. And that is what I have for expenses, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions from council? I guess that's easy.
As a side note, like I always do, as of February 29th, we have collected 61.1%, or 5.8 million, of the total tax commitment. This is slightly below last year, where we were 61.25% collected.
Still moving forward, though, right?
Still moving forward. And that's it.
Thank you. Next item?
Is the Police Department grant.
Chief Brooks will talk about the grant we received from MEMA.
Good evening. The town was recently notified that we did receive a 2011 Homeland Security Grant Award, and I'd like to give a brief history of how this came about. The 2011 Homeland Security Grant Program application deadline was December 1st of last year. Lisbon submitted an application to the Maine Emergency Management Agency, also known as MEMA, for 4 30-channel radio consoles and antenna system for the Rural Regional Communications Center Plan. Letters of support for that application were received from the towns of Livermore Falls, Livermore, Minot, Mechanic Falls, Leeds, Greene, Sabattis, Durham, and the city of Lewiston. The application amount totaled $159,945. That was on December 1st. However, on December 14th, at the Androscoggin County Budget Committee meeting, County Commissioner Greenwood presented a plan to that committee to keep the Androscoggin County Sheriff's dispatch operation in the county building. That action on his part ignored the work of the towns previously mentioned, including Lisbon, and effectively torpedoed the Rural Regional Communications Center grant application. The next day, December 15th, MEMA contacted me and advised me that they had been watching the Androscoggin County issue for some time and would give the town of Lisbon an opportunity to reapply for Lisbon. The revised application had to be in their office by December 19th. New quotes, new letters of support, complete application rewrite, all was completed and submitted to MEMA on December 19th. The revised 2011 Homeland Security Grant Program application is for two 20-channel radio consoles to replace the two consoles currently being used in our Lisbon Comm Center. Grant application amount is $97,242. On February 10th of this year, I received a written notification from MEMA that Lisbon had been awarded $58,450. That amount was 60% or $38,792 under the requested amount. MEMA had received grant application requests that totaled nearly 4 times the amount of funding available statewide. Many requests were denied any funding, and so I took it that 60% was better than zero. However, the 2011 Homeland Security Grant Program was the final year that full funding of application requests would be available. Beginning next year, the 2012 grant program will require a local match from the applicants. I knew that this was Lisbon's last best chance to receive full Homeland Security funding to replace our radio consoles. I contacted officials at MEMA and lobbied for more, preferably full funding. After a couple of these conversations, I was assured that MEMA would revisit Lisbon's application request. On March 7th, I received written notification that MEMA had reconsidered Lisbon's application and revised the award amount to the full amount requested, $97,242. And that's where we stand today. That is for 2 radio consoles in our comm center for Lisbon.
It's great news.
I was going to say, nice work.
Yeah, actually
Thanks
really
for all
good.
that hard work, Chief.
Absolutely. What's really kind of neat about this is this dispatch really just doesn't serve, just the police. It actually serves quite a few functions of the town. Could you just mention some of the functions that you do dispatch that's just not the police that local dispatch actually supports?
Fire, EMS, Lisbon Emergency. We have communications capability with all town services in Lisbon, Public Works, all the utility departments, school department. We also have radio communications with Androscoggin County, Androscoggin EMA, Saginaw County, Topsom PD, all our neighbors. We're first call to Durham for structure fires, so we're on top of that as well. We have a lot of capability over there.
I think it's really important for people to realize, too, with a lot of the county dispatch conversation going on, but a lot of that was mainly just for PD. I mean, it was for police dispatch. It wasn't to take over the fire and the emergency emergency and dog officer and everything else. So, I mean, regardless how the town ever does it, there's always going to be a need for a dispatch here. So it's good to see that we have the funding and the grants are out there, and we're really very glad that you went out and actually were able to get this grant, because it does actually help us update our equipment. This equipment will pretty much get us to the technology where everybody else is striving for at this point, right?
Exactly. Yes. One of these consoles, if you recall, we brought with us from the basement of the town office building in downtown Lisbon Falls. So it's been around a while, as I have.
It's great news. Thank you very much, Chief.
Okay.
Does anybody of the council have any comments or questions for Chief on? Good. Glad we got money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Twyla?
Is the town manager's report?
Just to follow up on that, the regional dispatch and the ongoing discussions that the county is having, tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, they're holding a workshop in the county building to discuss more of their proposal, and whatever else comes up in that discussion, it probably will be very well attended. Then tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, they have their regular scheduled county commissioners meeting. That is not on the agenda, but it may get some discussion. And we'll be there to follow up on that and see if we can pitch them on our proposal. But, Planning Board Chair and Vice Chair and Scott Benson met with our planner last week, and that was a real good meeting, talking about the future of looking at the Route 196 corridor as well as the Route 9 corridor and other areas. We'll be discussing a bit of that on next Tuesday at our workshop, and getting everybody up to date on that. Fire Department had their annual banquet last Saturday. It was very well attended, a nice affair. They hand out awards and certificates. They do a real nice job, and they recognize the people that really work hard. And this was a tough year for them with a lot of different things going on, but it was a nice affair. They do a nice job. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Next item, Twyla?
Is the school budget presentation?
Good evening. Okay.
On the side
While the projector's warming up, earlier in the evening, we handed out updated subsidy figures, and they are different. They are different than the ones that we distributed last week. If you noticed on the bottom left-hand corner, the date that we will be working with for this rate as of today is March 16th, 2012. If there's anybody in the audience who does not have a copy, would like a copy, I can hand those out. Let's see. This evening, the presentation that I'm about ready to go through is the school department's budget as of today. One thing about the subsidy report is it's different even from the one that we had last week, because our adult education subsidy numbers came in, and due to lower enrollment, our state subsidy was reduced, and as a result, the number went from about 298,000 up to 319,407. And this number includes adult education. And if I remember last year when we were doing these presentations, we discovered that the numbers that we had been using for the time that I've been here were just the school department, and it wasn't an actual reflection of the overall costs. So we've done a much better job this year putting together a budget that includes adult education for one, but I think in most aspects, I've said this before during school committee meetings, that the budget that we present to you is the most accurate that any of the budgets in the 3 years that I've been superintendent that we presented.
I'm going to shut up one so the lights the camera can't see.
Okay. Again, historically, when I look back, before I begin, historically, I went back in the last few years that I've been superintendent, and I looked at the bottom line in the increase in local funding, and we are right around maybe a little bit more than where we were last year. However, if you've been to the school committee meetings, you've heard me say that there are a number of variables that are going to impact the school department's budget, and I feel very confident that in the end, these variables are going to help us reduce this number relatively significantly over the next few months. And there's some pieces that have to fall into place, and I feel a lot better. I know looking at the number, it can be, when you see this presentation as it is today, the numbers are high, and it's in this economic times, we understand that, but I just want to reiterate to all of the Lisbon community and people in Lisbon that our numbers, these are what they are as of today, and I'm very confident that when we do present in a couple of months from now, we will have a lot of the variables. The numbers are better figures for all these different variables, and our numbers will be a lot better. And I think that when it's all said and done, the budget that we have will be, obviously a fiscally responsible budget. To answer the question earlier, in regard to, does the school department have extra money for, in this year's budget to offset next year's budget? Is that was your question, right, Ms. Fitzgerald? One of the things that I have done over the last few years is, instead of putting in a lot of big ticket items or any type of items, what we looked at is what we had for needs for the following year, and we tried to utilize that money so we didn't add items, whether it was vehicles or floor scrubbers, which has been historically the types of conversations we've had over the years that always get, you need to put that off for another year. Maintenance on the facilities. There's a lot of pieces that we try to take, or what I've done is I froze the budget probably a month and a half ago, and what I've done is I've looked at what we do have for money that may be available, and we're purchasing things that we would have normally bought, would have tried to advocate for next year's budget, and make those purchases and make those improvements and make those preparations, so that in the end we're not asking for new money, we're just using existing money. And so there more than likely will not be extra money. However, I do like to keep about 244,000 roughly. That's what it costs just in general operations and salaries, benefits for our entire system. So I like to try to keep at least that amount of money in undesignated, so that we can roll that over to offset the next budget. I do have a proposal tonight. There's something that we thought of that will be able to use money that we have now that will reduce even the budget that I'm presenting tonight by close to 60,000. However, I've only talked to maybe one or two of the school committee members, and so I didn't want to change it before I actually presented it, so I wanted to put it out there tonight. It will require action on the town council side, but in my mind, I think it's a good way for us to utilize existing money to make purchases out of next year's budget, which will lower this ultimately. So I'll go into more details with that, and then we can discuss. It would be an action. I believe you'd have to take action on it after July 1st, but we can talk about that as we go through the next few months. Just to give an overview of this particular budget, the administrative recommendations in this proposed budget include an overall school budget increase of around 3.88%, which is equivalent to $533,527. The total budget, including adult education, is $14,291,593. The total amount that needs to be raised locally is $5,595,188. As of today, I'll try to focus a lot on the difference between what the state provides us for subsidy, and then also what we've last year or so, we've really been focusing on what the local contribution is, and that's what people want to know because it impacts their taxes, local taxes. As of today, the proposed school department budget will require a $319,407 increase in the local contribution taxes. The school committee has put together their budget priorities for the year, and the first priority or top priority is to maintain the existing programs and services that we have currently, to continue to support and demonstrate student progress, consider technology improvements. One area that I know I'll be questioned about is in our essential programs and services. When we made all our cuts over the last few years, the essential programs and services, or EPS is what it's referred to commonly, it's what it's referred to, is a formula that the state has put together, and they look at school departments and they say that this is the amount, this is the funding, or these are the number of positions based on student enrollment that you would need to operate a school. Now it's a very basic formula. However, we've really used that particular formula to develop our budgets over the last few years, and those are the areas where we made reductions. If we were, an example would be that the state will pay, in a school system our size, they'll pay for like 1.7 nurses, 1.8 nurses, around there. Well, the community has always supported that we have a nurse in each building, so we have 3 nurses. So we're over the essential programs and services formula for nurses, so anything that we're over, you have to raise locally. So we've looked at that, very closely, and we actually had it down to, it was 80, it was, what was the, it was 80,000 or something like that last year. We reduced it quite a bit. The problem is that we had some factors. This year, you'll see that the amount that's over 100% essential programs and services, or EPS, has increased to $454,276. Now that is the result of a couple of things. Most of the things that one of the major things we had to do last year is we had the job stimulus funded, and I made it a point, or tried to make it a point, to tell the community and the town council school committee that there's about $150,000 that we received in this grant. And what you had to do is you had to pull all that money in those positions out of your budget into a grant, and then as a result, the school committee would need to look at whether or not they were going to add those back in. So this particular budget does have all those positions added back into our budget, but again, that's $150,000 of the of this increase in the essential programs and services number. The other piece is our special education. The special education numbers, due to out-of-district placements and services or changes in services for students, that number has increased to that's an increase of over $256,000 this year alone. I believe $140,000 of it is out-of-district placements for some of our special education students. In transportation, there's an increase of roughly close to $60,000, and I do have a proposal tonight that would potentially take all that money out of this. It would take that money out of this budget as an increase, and we would just use existing funds. Other budget priorities are to continue to address the NEASC facility concerns. We are looking at putting in for our ADA money. In our title money for next year is to make the stage at the high school handicap accessible. That would also address the exit. If you know, there's one exit off the stage that we were written up for in our last NEASC report. So this would actually change that. We're getting pricing and quotes for that work. So that is something that's not impacting this budget because it's grant money or title money, but that is work that we're going to be doing. We're also looking at, we've made some changes obviously to the high school, the side and the windows. Now we need to look at the heating units and the thermostats at the high school at different levels. We need to convert the high school from steam to hot water. So we're going to begin making those, making efforts to put that into place. And then other short and long-term building renovations at both the middle school and high school. And for those of you in the audience and the members of the facilities committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has served on the facilities committee over the last few years, because we have made a lot of progress, and it is our goal to, we tried to put something together for April, but it seems between Dancing with the Stars and all the athletic events, there's no available nights, so we're hoping to put together an informational night in the fall, is what we're looking at now, I believe. And what we'd like to do is share with you all the pieces that we've done in the facilities over the last couple of years that you just can't see when you drive by. And there's been a lot. And so I want to thank all the members who dedicated their time and effort to make all the changes that we have to our facilities. But we need to continue that, and that's why it's one of the top priorities for our budget. We want to present a fiscally responsible budget, and that's, if you look at the revenue sheets and the individual budget lines, the majority of the increases in our lines are mostly salaries and benefits. We continue to look to consolidate resources with the town and area school systems. So again, with this particular budget, the local contribution would increase to $5,595,188, and the total general budget would be $14,291,593, and that does include adult education. These are some of the big areas I've already mentioned. One is the job stimulus funding, which was $157,000, or over $157,000 that we needed to add back into the budget. The other one is special education costs. Those have increased to $256,000. We did add $5,000 in technology, and that would allow us to actually update and maintain the existing technology that we have in our system. That particular line is still under budgeted from what it was even 5 years ago. And in transportation, this is the one we originally had, I think when we originally presented this to the school committee, we had 4 buses in the budget. There are 2 in this budget. However, I think we can remove one of them. We're waiting to hear back from the state whether they will reimburse us for the refurbished, for them to refurbish our buses up in Limestone. I was told that I would probably hear in another week or so. If that's the case, then we would look at using some money from this year to pay for that. However, I do want to keep the purchase of 1 bus in the budget, but I plan on paying for it, and I'll explain how we can pay for that out of existing money. So this could, after this evening or even after the next school committee meeting, this is an amount that can be taken out of this budget, so it would drop us down to about $250, a little over $250. Some other variables which are the same as in the past. First one is insurance. We have in this budget, we have 9% budgeted for insurance. For every percent, we anticipate that number will be, the average has been around 6.5% over the last few years. We're hoping that it's lower than that. For every percent that's less than 9%, it's between, 15, 17,000, Kathy? So 15, 17,000. So if it comes in at 5%, we're looking at over 40,000, almost 50-something thousand dollars in savings there. We did complete negotiations with the LAA. They agreed to a 0%, a 1%, and a 1% over the next 3 years. We have negotiations with the LEA, which the LAA is the administrative of the local agreement we have with administrators. The LEA is the Teachers Association, and we do have negotiations that will begin on, I believe, the 27th of this month. We have, in the past, I mentioned that we had a significant amount of retirements last year. This year, we've actually had a number of retirements. But again, as I mentioned in my school committee presentation, some of those retirements and resignations have occurred in areas that have allowed us to potentially reassign people. So I think there's some flexibility there, and we're going to be looking closely at that. We discussed that today during our administrative team meeting, where, if this happens, if this person, we have some people who have tentatively told us they were retiring. So when and if they do officially retire, there's some flexibility there. That could be savings for this particular budget. Special education. Special education is linked to student enrollment. That can be a positive or a negative. If we have students who transfer in, which we've had in the past, we've had students who transfer in over the summer who require out-of-district placement or other services, then our special education costs would increase. If those students transfer out of the system, then our cost obviously would decrease. So there's a little bit of unknown and uncertainty with that particular area. Student enrollment. We potentially I know there's at least one, potentially there's a private school that may be closing, and I know that there are multiple numbers of our students that attend there. If they were to come to public education, our enrollment would go up. If we, for instance, that would be a positive. A negative would be if our kindergarten enrollment numbers were down. That would mean that we wouldn't need as many kindergarten teachers and ed techs, so there's savings there. However, we just started advertising for the pre-K enrollment, and I know that the numbers are, they're actually higher than what they've ever been. So I think people are more aware of the program and have already started to register their children. So I don't believe I think if anything, we'll maintain, if not increase. The proposal that I will be talking about and asking for, it requires the approval, obviously, of the school committee, but then it also requires an action on the town council, is we do have the contingency fund that we put together for last year. We took some money that we received from, I believe it was revenue from Maine Care, and we put aside, I don't have the total amount in front of me. However, I know that what I would suggest is that we would reduce our budget, this proposal, by the amount of a bus, which is one bus, which would be around, I want to say 29,000. We would then ask that we would move the money from facilities to transportation to cover the purchase of a new vehicle or a new bus. Then what we would do is we would take the the money from the contingency fund, move it into facilities, which is what we originally intended it for. We didn't intend it to do this, but we intended to have that fund so that if we were to work on track or other repairs or facilities, but you can move that money into the facilities line, and by doing that, you could decrease this budget by $58,000, and you'd still get yourself, we'd get the new bus that we would need, and then we'd have money potentially for a refurbished vehicle. The key piece to this is that the state will reimburse us around 68-7% for a bus, but they don't pay you until a year after you've already made the commitment. So what would happen is this would be a 3-year, I believe it's a 3-year lease for a bus. We would pay. We would put the money in there this year, and then next year they would pay us. They would reimburse us in revenue 67% of the 28,000. So next year this would go from 28,000, but it would be an increase of ballpark close to 10-15,000 roughly. So just something. It's something for the school committee to consider, but I think it's using existing money versus asking for new money. And so I know that in the past that's been. It's been the best. That's how we did the renovations at the high school, is we took the expiring bonds and turned them into a new bond, and we took multiple expiring bonds and the lease of the portables and turned it into a new bond and did the renovations. So this is just another way of doing that. The other variable is that the state subsidy, we do have an increase in state subsidy this year of $253,042. However, it's important to remember that this is the proposed state budget has not been approved, and that number could be decreased. So that is more than likely potentially a negative variable on this budget. However, there are other variables that could impact it positively by decreasing our bottom line. I put together a few slides, and I will have this available on our webpage for people to review tomorrow morning. But this has a 10-year history of three different figures. One is the actual general budget, the other is the state contribution, and the third is the local contribution. And as you can see, the local contribution has increased over the last 2 years. We were at $5,177,171 in 2011, 2012, and we actually were as low as you can see, we were as low as $4,794,750 in 2008, and we were as high as $5,581,709 in 2005. So we are, this proposed budget would put us at one of the highest local contributions that we've had. Now, one other thing to remember is that the state, if you look at the amount of state funding that we've lost over the last 3 years, it's close to $600,000, between $800,000. So we've lost a significant amount of state subsidies. So that's a reflection of why we've had to raise things locally. And quite honestly, all the information I have from the state is that's probably going to be the case for the next few years, at least until state revenues increase, which they're predicting. They've given it a year, I want to say 2017, but again, that's just an estimate. This is an actual local contribution only, and you can see that we have, it was flat in 2011-12, but again, there was an increase from 2010-2011. When we made all of our cuts in 2011, we were at the point where we were looking at potentially cutting programs and services if we went any deeper, and as a result, we needed to raise the local contribution by roughly $250,000. A lot of those positions that we've discussed over those years are what's left. And so again, we're hoping to propose a budget by maintaining the budget that we are proposing maintains all the programs and services that we've had over the last few years. We have shifted because we've made so many cuts over the last 3 years. We have looked at, do we need, for instance, a full-time guidance counselor at the community school? And we may have taken a retirement in a teaching position or something, and then shifted that money into a guidance counselor position. So even though there's different positions that we will be looking at, we've actually just shifted different positions. And that's where, when I say that we have retirements, we can, because of retirements in certain positions, we can move people around. Sometimes, to be quite honest, we're actually possibly going to be able to move some people back who haven't taught in their content area or not in their normal or in the content area they're hired for the last couple of years. I mean, they're all certified and highly qualified in different areas, but we had to move them around to save positions. And in this case, there's some that could be, hopefully we'll be able to move back into their original positions. I also put down the local contribution for adult education. Now again, these numbers have changed just over the last few days, and that was a result of a decrease in state subsidy. Historically, as I've briefly mentioned, 2010, 2011, we had to increase the local contribution, $262,598 in 2010, 2011. Last year, or in 2011, 2012, there was no increase. And this year, if you look at the 2012-2013 proposed budget as of today, there's a $319,407 increase. A couple of the pieces that I've mentioned each year, we do have an increase of state subsidy, but the transition amount is the amount that the state, by law, they were required, or the law states that they're supposed to pay for 55% of funding, funding obligation, but they've never been able to meet that percentage. So you, or the community, Lisbon community, has to raise an additional $291,971, and that's the transition amount. And you'll see that on the your subsidy sheets. The school achievement report. This will be updated. This is actually last year's numbers because we will receive the new numbers in April. Last year we received them on April 5th. One thing that I would like to point out is that I was concerned about the progress that the high school was showing last year. As you can see, that they went from, in 2009 to 10, they showed a growth of 7.64, and then last year there was a negative 3.56% growth. However, the preliminary numbers that I'm getting, or that I've received from the state so far, are showing that both the elementary, LCS and PWS, have maintained or shown additional growth, and the high school as well will be showing. I'm predicting that the number will be a positive again. So I'll have those new numbers in April, but I'll be able to share those with you. As of today, this particular budget, there would be a 0.7 mil increase in the local taxes as a result of the Lisbon School Department's proposed budget. Based on our calculations, that would roughly be around $70 increase per $100,000 valuation of your home or property. Correct? Close? In summary, the Lisbon School Department has addressed some very difficult budget decisions over the last 3 years. Understanding the economic situation in Lisbon, we are preparing a budget that maintains all existing programs and services in an effort to provide the best education for our students. Last year, we were able to present a budget that resulted in a 0% increase in local taxes. Our goal is to limit the impact on local taxes. Yet even with the potential of increased subsidy, the reduction of federal stimulus money and increases in both general operations and special education make this difficult. As of today, there are still a number of variables that will impact this budget, and we are confident that this preliminary amount will decrease as we move forward in the process. And I would be more than happy to take questions from you or anybody in the audience if you have time.
Does anybody of the council have any questions? Before I open it up to the public, I just want to thank you, because I've been sitting through quite a few meetings, and it's going to be a tough battle. I mean, you've done really good up to this point. Numbers sometimes are hard to see that, but there's a big struggle. As with the town, I mean, our needs are increasing every year, but our revenues and our resources are shrinking, so it's really not a fair battle to fight. But we do appreciate your efforts, and I'm sure as this moves forward, we'll hopefully get rid of some of the unknowns and get more definite numbers. But we do appreciate your work trying to keep this as practical as it can be. I mean, sometimes it's hard to see that from the outside, but there's a lot of work to get it to where it is today. Any other questions from council at all, or is there any, we probably won't open a large time frame for questions, but is there any quick questions that someone would want to ask of the superintendent? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Green, what's your...
Yeah, you.
Tom Berry, 21 Huey Street. Mr. Green, what would be your best guess at an anticipated total student enrollment?
We are at 1360. We're over 1,350, and I would guess we're going to roughly stay that way. You'll see a dip at the high school because they have one large graduating class. However, the other classes that are following up behind.
So basically 13.5 would be a ballpark.
Yeah, right around
figure.
13.5. Yep.
Good enough. Thank you.
Dot, if you would, a few more questions.
Question of Mr. Green. He mentioned several times teachers' retirement and moving them around. So does that mean that teachers' employees are retiring and you're moving them to another position?
No. You mean like the
Like double dipping?
double
they
dipping?
call
No,
it.
no. Anybody that would retire in our system would be required to reapply, and we haven't. We don't have any retired. We don't have anybody double dipping in teachers.
'Cause with today's
And,
unemployment and students graduating from college, aspiring to be teachers, anyone retiring would be at the highest level of pay, and hiring a new teacher at a lower level of pay would be an opportunity to reduce the budget.
Yes, and I've always believed in that. However, as superintendent, I've learned that for the most part, people who are retiring usually take less like single benefits, and some of the ones that we hire, the newer people that we hire generally have families, so the savings aren't as significant as I once thought. It all depends on what they have for insurance, but a lot of them come in with full family, and you're looking at $12,000 plus more per person versus somebody who takes single coverage. So the savings, it isn't like it's a 30 or 40,000. I think I've heard that in the past when we've made presentations that you could save 20 or 30,000, but in reality, it all depends on who you hire, and you can't obviously hire somebody based on their insurance benefits.
Right.
But we don't have. I'm thinking, and I can't think of any. We don't have any employees that I can think of right now that came back that are double dipping.
Thank you.
I think she was in
What's that?
when you said they switch around. You're really taking 8th grade teachers down to 2nd grade.
Oh, yeah. When people retire, say they're in one impact area, we actually would just move staff members. When we made all our cuts, when we reduced the 20-something staff members 2 years ago, we had to move because of the reduction in forced language. If somebody, for instance, an example is one person was teaching social studies, and they've been teaching social studies for 15 years, we needed to move them to the middle school, and then we had to move another person out of one content area into, say, technology. And so what we're hoping to do is I moved 4 7 through 12 positions into the middle school to save them instead of cutting those people, because we had some openings. So it's in areas that they're certified and in areas that they're highly qualified, but we shift people around to different buildings depending on what we have for needs. But it isn't taking somebody who's retired and moving them into another position.
Sure. One last question, and then we'll move on.
Mr. Green, I don't mean to put you on the, Debbie Berry, 21 Huey Street, Lisbon Falls. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but one of the things on your slides I didn't see is any results from the money that taxpayers are paying to educate the students. There was a thing I was looking at today on the No Child Left Behind, the 2012 assessment, and I didn't see any slides regarding we're paying to have the children educated. We don't know what the goals are, the teachers are tasked with, but the results of what the test I saw was, so I was wondering if there's going to be a slide there to say what we're getting for what we're paying for.
Yeah, well, one of the slides I did add on there was the student achievement slide. It was at the very end. It had last year's numbers, and as that, if you look at that slide, and I can get it to you, as of last year, we were showing progress. We actually had an area school visit our middle school this week as a result of the increase in the kneecap, which is the local or the state assessment. So I'm not sure where you're seeing low test scores, because both the community school and the middle school have shown progress and actually met or exceeded state scores for a number of years. It's the high school that I've been focusing on for the last 3 years, and they have actually shown growth over the last 2 years, and they're probably, this year, they're going to show fairly significant growth. So I'm not sure which site you're pulling the numbers from. And if it's a state site, one thing to look at is the date on the test, because they're about 3 years behind.
Yep, it was 2012. It was for the 2012, I guess, for the year tested for 2011, and they'd published for 2012. What I was concerned with, the lady had brought up at a previous town meeting that she wants her children to receive excellent education.
Yep. I remember that from last year.
A 1 or 2% increase of being able to read, do their mathematics, etc. That I just wonder if there's a slide there so parents can see that for what they're paying for and the taxpayers are paying for their education, that it's not just a 1 or 2% increase, that they're actually getting that education that's going to prepare them for their college, their tech school, for their lives. But what I was looking at today, it was like 1 or 2%. It was like level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in the middle range, the level 3 and 2, if you were to add those together, it wasn't an increase that I would be, I just don't know if that's a,
yeah,
you could
if
use
you
a
want
comparison slide.
I would be more than happy to, if you had time, I would be more than happy to sit down and look at what you were looking at, because I might be able to explain it different. Because what I'm not quite sure. I think I know what you're. I think I know what you're asking, but I think what you're looking at is the kids who partially meet and the kids who there's kids who will exceed, partially meets, does not,
It's
or
like
meets, and
10%
does not meet.
exceed, and then the rest of it is basically a grouping, but the ones that aren't proficient, that's a category that would be unacceptable to me if I was a parent. I don't have a child in school right now, but I do pay taxes for those kids to get educated, and that group concerns me greatly, because that's the No Child Left Behind, and those are a lot of children. So what I'll do, I'll email that link to you. If you get a chance, maybe I can call you tomorrow and we can set up time, maybe Thursday.
I'd also would invite you to come to our school committee meeting on Monday night, because our literacy.
My hours at work change, I'm sorry.
If you can watch it on TV then, because our literacy specialists are going over, our literacy specialists and our Title I reading, our math teacher are all going over all our test scores, our kneecap, NWEA, so not just one assessment, they're going over all of them.
They're looking at the broad range. Thank you, Mr.
All right, any other questions from council? All set. Thank you, Mr. Green. We appreciate it. And the school board? Steve, you're up. Just to add, there'll be a lot more in the next couple of months. There'll be plenty of times to ask questions about budget, because we do have quite a bit of work to do all the way through, so. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, this is slide that we generally show every year. The 2012-2013 management team goals, again, are to balance the level of service that we can afford with the residents are requesting, with a focus on maintaining, improving that level of service. We also want to make sure that we continue our infrastructure improvements. We still have a lot to do there, and that's ongoing. We want to work to budget for the long-term benefits of the community, not just the short terms, and also provide a workforce and environment that is healthy and productive, which does our wellness programs and things like that. The non-tax revenue scenario for this coming year, state tax revenue sharing budget, we budgeted $830,000 last year. According to State Revenue Department, it's only going to increase by $30,000. There is a bill on the floor, LD 1835, that has not been voted on, and they want to kind of rearrange how that revenue sharing is distributed. The LPC, Legislative Policy Committee, has not voted to support that. It pits the smaller communities against the service centers, and they don't think that's appropriate. This year, we also received a $12,000 revenue payment from the state that we had not budgeted for last year, so we see a little increase there. And our use of surplus, we had been budgeting about $200,000. We have dropped that down this year to $100,000. Over the last 2 years, we have not needed our surplus. We've done well, but it's still, we budget for it just in case, and it seems like even with the last 2 budgets, things get pretty tight. We may have to utilize our surplus. So we see a net decrease in revenue of $153,000 this year. Again, you can see over the last few years, we, as in the school department, we are seeing decreasing non-tax revenues, which encompass the revenue sharing and excise tax. So it's been decreasing. Our revenue sharing history, again, you can see that the thicker line is what we budgeted, and you can see how it's decreased from just about 1 million down to about 750,000, and it's climbed a little bit. We've seen a little bit of increase over the years, but not anywhere near what we were back in 2008 and 2009, where we had revenue sharing about 1.2 million. Excise tax history, this is one of our, another one of our larger revenue sources. We have budgeted up and down on that because several years ago we expected that the excise tax may change. There was a bill on the legislature that didn't pass, and we've held pretty well. But again, we're expecting a decrease in our revenue sharing based on what we're collecting this year. Each year, when we start the budget process, I ask each department head to put out to me their budgets of what they need to maintain their programs, whether it's capital reserves for the fire trucks or for new cars, buildings, and what have you. We have not put in paving for shim and overlays over the last 4 years. This year, we have about $500,000 worth of shim and overlay on some of our roads that need to be done. We can't bite that all off at once, but there's a $250,000 ticket on that. The capital reserve allowance is approximately $200,000 increase. This is driven by trying to bring our fire truck replacement program up to balance where it should be. We've been underfunding that over the last 4 years. That's an additional $150,000. We have some road improvements, sidewalks in small areas that we're looking at that need to be worked. That's $30,000. And then contracted services, an additional $62,000. The community bus service right now, without any grants, and we're looking for them along with Western Maine Transportation, but if we don't receive those, we will have to increase that bus service by what we give to $15,000 to maintain it. But we are still working with AvCog and Western Maine and MDOT to try to find another pot of money. The waste disposals are solid waste. That's a contracted service with MWAC. And then we have been spending more money in legal over the last 4 years. We bumped that up a little bit. And plus our performance management consulting, we have 2 more sessions, and that will complete that and put that in place in 2013. And then our debt service increase this year is principal. That increase is going up to $20,000 additional. My recommendation, which I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion on in a few next couple of months, is to maintain the shim and overlay money at $250,000, to fund our capital reserve at $85,000, to cover the fire truck replacement program, our sidewalk and road improvements, a fire department first responder program, the PD cruiser video systems. That's a grant we received, and we need matching funds for that. And solid waste, trash, and wood trailer. You saw that when we did our tour. We have a wood trailer that we have to pull together the sides to make sure they don't collapse. And our trash trailer needs to be replaced, and also library needs to get air conditioning units in the upstairs. The ones we have are window versions, and they're fairly old. Contracted services, again, is a $51,000 request. Software agreements, performance management consulting, legal budget, and fire department first responder training. We also went through the budget, Jessica and Ryan did, looking at our fuel appropriations we've had over the few years, and they found that we really need, based on what the cost of fuel is today, need to increase that by $20,000. And then again, we have a debt service increase of $20,000 this year coming. So our spending trends, very much like what Mr. Green had pointed out, the school and the town have stayed pretty consistent over the years of what our funding requests have been. And the county tax stays fairly flat. They're a little bit less this year, but pretty consistent what you see there in our spending. The Lisbon mill rate for the last 10 years, again, from 2003 to 2006, you stayed pretty consistent. You dropped your mill rate in 06, 07, and 07, 08. You did that by using money from your undesignated fund balance, a substantial amount. We bumped it back up to reflect what our expenses were at $25.50. Last 2 years you held that, and then last year was 21, and this year that we're in is 21. If you look at the bottom chart, you'll see what our area, we updated all of our area tax rates. Again, what you need to pay attention to is what, on the bottom line, you'll see towns that are at 100% of their sales ratio. That's our goal when we finish our reval, that we'll be at 100%. But right now, we're at roughly 83%. And Mr. Van Tynen, of those of you who in the audience who were here when he gave a presentation, if we were at 100%, that tax rate would be around $17.40, which is very competitive with our local communities. Breakdown in the budget by departments. If you look at the first pie, slice of pie up there at 30%, that's general government. Next one's public works at 22.5%, police 16, debt service at 7.5, public services, which includes our bus line and general assistance in areas like that, at 6.8, fire at 6.4, hydrant rentals at 4.9, and all those at 5%. Public works and public safety and general government make up 73.9% of our budget when you look at the total cost. The budget trends over the last few years from 09 is, if you look at this, it's very consistent across the board. Where we have 28% in our general government in '09. In our current year, we're at 30.8, and we'll drop it down to 30. But the thing to remember here is that percentage-wise of the budget, we're working with less dollars and fewer people, and we're still able to maintain the same percentage across the board that we have in 2009. So we're still getting it done. The municipal budget breakdown, again, the first large pie, this is what we do. We have to have people to provide the services. Wages and benefits are 50%, 50.9% of the overall budget. Contracted services are 11.2, the county tax 7.5, debt services 6.8, supplies 6.2, equipment and capital 8.5, hydrant rental 3.9. It's a $292,000 bill. Repairs and maintenance, 2.1. All others are 2.4, and professional development is 0.17% of the budget. Okay. It's stuck. This is a recap of where we are at this point. Capital increase in equipment is $335,000. In my proposal, that $250,000 of that is in paving, shim and overlays. Supplies is an increase in $26,000. Most of that is in gas and diesel increases. Contracted services, we have an upgrade to a phone system. The phone system you have in this building came with you from the old building. In order for us to take on any more, improve our dispatching in areas like that, we need to upgrade our phone lines and do a little bit of work. It also increases our legal, trying to stay on task with that. And again, the personnel management consulting fees. The wages and benefit increase of $187,000. Most of this is retirement. There's an increase of 61%. And when we get into one of our workshops, I'll explain. I gave you a sheet that explains it a little bit better. The FICA, there was an increase in 6%. Unemployment went up 106% because of one person. So we've had to make some adjustments there. And the wages and increased benefits include step increases and things like that. We have employees who have been here 5, 10, 15 years who get increases based on that. And again, debt services, it's an increase of $20,000. Debt reduction, I know this past few months we've been looking at each department and looking out how we've been spending money, how the budgets have changed over the last 4 years, and personnel changes. I thought it would be appropriate to look at our debt reduction over a 5-year projection. If we stay the course and we don't take on any more debt, we will pay down from just over 15 million. It'll drop it down to 8.5 if we can stay the course. Sometimes that's hard. But the municipal budget projection, keep in mind, again, if we stay consistent with where we are today and what we're projecting out for our capital reserves, our debt reduction, you're using a 2% increase, which can change, but just for this, this is what your budget would look like. You'll see from 2013 a slight increase from 14, 2015 it will go up, and then it will start to drop, which will, as a result of debt service pay down, as well as our revaluation will be completed and adjustments will be made there. So it's going to be a tough few years ahead of us. And this doesn't take into consideration any revenue projections that we may have from the state, and it doesn't take into any thoughts about where our valuations will be at that point. You asked for budget options this year. One of the options that we can look at is a 10% reduction from all departments across the board. That would drop your budget from 7.5 down to 7 million, an increase over this current budget of $146,010, or 2.1%. The other option is we could pull out the paving and all our capital reserve projects, which would be the fire truck replacement, responder program, the solid waste trash trailer and wood trailer, and no public works dump bodies. That would be an increase of 1.4% over the current budget that we're in, of $100,076. So you have choices that we all have to make. This is what the council asked for, to look at different options. And these are two that we can look at when we start our discussions. That's it.
Thank you, Steve. We just received our books tonight, so the council has a lot of work to do, look through the books. And then we have plenty of Tuesdays, next couple months. Council all set to move on? Twyla, next.
Next item, there are no appointments. Council communications.
Does anybody have any communications, though?
I do. I had the opportunity to join in at my first Conservation Commission meeting last week, and they're preparing for the upcoming fishing derby, and so they're pretty excited about that, to start their fundraising and so forth, and they're talking about getting ready to review and assess some other town-owned properties. I was really impressed when I was there by the combination of knowledge and dedication that the members of the commission are showing, and I'm excited to see them doing so much work and talking about doing workshops and doing more assessing and looking at more than just Beaver Park, at all the properties in town. So it was pretty exciting, so I'm looking forward to my next meeting.
Anybody else?
I want to say I also had the opportunity to go to the library governing board meeting, and I see Diane in the audience there, and that was quite an interesting meeting, just to find out what was going on in the library and see the issues they have with everything from people trying to bring in dogs to the library to like overdue books they're trying to collect on, and I think that was quite enlightening, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to report more on that to you guys.
Perfect. Gina?
I went to the MTM meeting last week, and I hadn't been able to make the last few, and it was interesting. They were talking about improvements to the building, things that we know need to be done, and that's kind of an interesting little community down there. There's a lot happening there, and of course, it kind of coincides with rec and what goes on with rec, and the rec department is really producing some revenue down there, and Mark's doing a great job. The folks that sit on the MTM board, you know, they're concerned mainly about the building, but they do interact with rec, and they work well together. I stayed about an hour and a half after and talked with Mark and Lynn, and they're very proud of the programs they have down there, particularly their senior program. I couldn't make it Friday, but I happened to go by there a little later, and that place was packed. There were cars everywhere down there, and the seniors really, they make a day of it on Friday, and they go and they visit and play games and eat and have a really good time. So that was an exciting adventure on Friday. But it's a great program down there, and they're doing a really good job, so should be proud of them.
Good. Any other? Just along with that, one of the things the council is really trying to do this year is actually visit all the committees and look to see how their working rules are and make sure that they're well supported. So I think it's really good that we can continue to reach out and bring the information back, because it's information we need to make the proper decisions. A couple notes. Our fire chief is here. I want to thank the fire chief and the fire department. There's some pretty big doings in town here, it seems, lately, like the fires and even out of town. They've been pretty active. So it all sounds like I hear good reports, so that's always a good thing. So again, thank them, and the volunteer fire department we have is probably a top around, and it'd be pretty hard to beat and pretty hard to replace. So thank them. And just to touch base on Chief's report on the grant, I think it's really great that we actually have a town that's looked at as a town that will receive grants like that. So to get almost $100,000 to improve our dispatch center is really a nice bonus to us, and will help us get to be where we need to be. There's been a lot of articles written in the paper over the last month or so mentioning Lisbon as some of the dispatch concerns, and I think it's really important that Lisbon realizes what good dispatch we have, and that we're going to try to continue that and support it, just because it does serve a lot more than just the police department. It serves the town wide as far as a lot of needed support for the other areas, as in emergency services and fire and our dog people and public works, and it just goes a very wide range of people that we do support with that. So it's really good. Thank you, Chief, for that grant, because I think it's going to go a long ways to help save us money and the townspeople money to actually have top-notch equipment. And that's it for me. If everybody's all set with communications, we'll move on.
There is no executive session. The motion is to adjourn. Order 2012-37.
Entertain a motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Nice job. It will be a meeting. Be here, 7 o'clock.